So I was recently rewatching the Dark Knight trilogy, and while it's beautiful in its craftsmanship, I just felt lost in its characters and story. I can understand why the director chose to do all this stuff, but the comic medium feels more alive than these films. It just feels like it's not a perfect scale to the source material. And then it kind of hit me. How come superhero movies are afraid of comic books? Superhero media is not defined by its exploration of subgenre or its runtime that can either feel way too short or way too damn long. No, to me, it's down to the source material being adapted from the beautiful panels of art, dialogue, and tone. I want to begin on a positive note. I will give some of its adaptations their gold stars on the fridge, as sometimes it's a way for a writer to expand on real life issues, break offensive character stereotypes, or just, injustice of unresolved plot threads. It's a way to correct the wrong in the past. But then to be on the negative side of it all, majority of the time these people creating it are just wanting to rehash a popular IP to simply fill your brain with more nostalgia and more money.
I am sick of all you guys ganging up on me. You guys all think you're so much better than me.
Oh, Meg, that is the least fancy thing I have ever heard.
For this video, I want to take the time to look at certain storylines, character stereotypes and overall plot lines to suit a movie's audience in the modern age, as majority of movies still don't know what to do. So let's look back around 25 years with the X-Men, as Hugh Jackman is a theatre kid who doesn't even...
I didn't know there was an animal called a wolverine.
Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are regarded as theatre legends with some iconic roles already in their roster, where for these three, these are our main X-Men characters.
They're gonna make him do this till he's 90.
But when it came time to actually making the costuming and the designs of these characters, what did the amazing Louise Middlemark have in mind for these characters? Fuck it. All black. She and the team did a bold choice of changing the colourful iconic costumes of these characters and to put them into black leather, and which it's so close to that one bit of Arrested Development that I can't not think of Tobias being this younger, more free-going version of Charles.
Oh, I am glad I didn't go with that outfit.
Its reason for not having the yellow spandex was down to a couple of reasons. The number one was the popularity of the Matrix and Blade trilogy, as those three films really pushed in the futuristic entanglement of leather. It was all about to create a language that the audience could clue them into what they were doing subconsciously, so when the story began to reveal itself, it was already embedded in some way into the consciousness, says the costume designer Kim Barrett on the Matrix films. Now, this isn't confirmed by any of the production, but they feel like they use this embedded strategy to convince people that they are superheroes and they are not like the others. They are different in their own regards because they wear leather. So this kind of terminology of embedded subconsciousness can be seen in today's superhero costuming with the MCU and the DCEU. Number two is the downfall of Batman and Robin with their very, very weird nipples and toyetic approach to design. Everything is that of to be sold on a shelf. This overwhelming change for the X-Men was simply to streamline everything into one subconscious. You see leather, you think of X-Men. You see bat nipples, and you don't want to watch it. Going forward, you need to understand what I mean when I say the half-baked effect, the term I'll be using for when a character is underdeveloped or drastically changed for a whole reason which can be seen differently than its source material. And this, from a design standpoint, is the perfect example of Avengers 2012, as it is a perfect exchange of a good change and a bad change. Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury is better in terms of the half-baked effect. The character of Hawkeye is the worst of this, as in retrospect, it's just awful. The popularity of design of the X-Men affecting the consuming of these two, as so much as I love Nick Fury's whole changes in coat, I hated what Hawkeye was wearing. Like, where is the colour? Where is the design, and where is the Hawkeye? This is not the same as its comic book counterpart. To further expand upon that, Hawkeye's character in the MCU is not a hero for hire, not a hero for the sake of the job. He's this wise old Gandalf type who loves what he does and loves being a father to his kids, which means he's just Jeremy Renner with a mohawk. It's awful. Look at it. It's dreadful. His half-baked design only gets better in the Disney Plus show, where he finally wears something purple, but when you actually look at the design and compare it to its comic book counterpart, it just falls flat. It's just a shirt, it's just purple. This isn't Hawkeye, as his characteristics are swapped out to be made for a modern audience. His coolest thing is off screen. With the character Ronan and the plot point being in that self-titled show, it's just really a shame for what they had, and they never used it to be anything more than just a simple costume change. He's just a half-baked mess that needs more than a purple top. This leads me to a wider experience of why my producers and directors changed fundamental aspects to link the benefit of a story. Like Hugh is still tall, Hawkeye is still dull, and Charles is now blue for some reason. The abundances of changes that were made in the film made me put into perspective that the half-baked effect was no longer affecting those of character designs and characters themselves. It's going after the broader movies. After Civil War, we never got anything made that was too closely adapted to the source material. Marvel and Disney realized that if they just say it's like the comic, people will be happy and cling to the everlasting hope that the half-baked goods will be actually cooked this time. Audiences will watch these films on day one, hoping that their favourite characters will not dumb down for the Marvel slop that they have been used to. For the fact of Civil War not being the first of this instance and not being the last, this entire mantra of Marvel and Disney gets me even more scared for Doomsday and Secret Wars as what's going to happen with the characters of Doctor Doom and the entirety of the ending of Loki. What are they going to change as you've made 10 years of stories feel so worthwhile that when those were over, it feels like an afterthought on what comics to pull from, as they feel like they've done all the hits within their entire collection.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know. Something amazing, I guess.
Making one of the reasons for Civil War as this personal tragedy for Steve and Tony, the big pulling arguments within the film as they give the opposite approach to the same solution. They both have this guilt of not doing enough. This is a good change. Compare it to the likes of the comics where it's just a few teenagers messing around and blowing up a house. It doesn't feel that satisfactory when you watch the film and you read the comic. Don't get it twisted, this little prank will lead to the divide of all superheroes in New York. This divide is across the whole city, but within the film, it's just that of the Avengers compound. It makes the whole audience perceive the comic to be too different from the source material. We have less characters, less incentive to bring all the plot lines from the original comic book, and more importantly, trying to pull too hard on a source material that doesn't really focus on Captain America as a whole. It's the entirety of everyone. It's a Captain America story first, whereas the comic book is Steve and Tony being the main characters. In this one, it's still trying to apply the loose ends from the last two films. It just feels like the comic book is an event where everything is changed from going forward, but in the movie, it's just made a few jokes, and it doesn't really matter until Infinity War, which, yes, I will give it its props. To dive a little bit into Infinity War and its changes, it does leave the Avengers to be nicely split up for their separate mission, but if I was a fan of the comic book, it's so drastically different. Why is the character of Adam Warlock a god, and in the movies he's an idiot? Why is Thanos trying to bone the embodiment of death, but then in the movie, he wants to just make things easier? Well, actually, it's the half-baked effect again. They pull from the best parts of the story and forget the rest. Speaking about an MCU movie who forgot the rest of the comic book, that goes to Thor: Love and Thunder, the worst Marvel movie I have ever seen. The tone is nothing like the books they pull from. The structure of the film is simply trying to do the hits of Jane, Goddess of Thunder, and Thor, the God Butcher. Its disregard for Jane's importance in the story to be something else than Thor's love interest is stupid. Her battle against cancer feels like another reason they work together, when in actuality it's the other way around. In the film, we get zero mystery on who this person is, no Malekith and no mythology. It's replaced with Russell Crowe doing what the hell this is.
Thunderbolt.
It's gone in the wrong direction. This is an issue for the book that should be adapted into the main line of the film, as this is a devastating and uplifting moment for the character as she becomes a mortal turned goddess. Then we get someone like Thor Odinson, who seems to have never interacted with a woman before and treats his entire roster of friends like they've just also never talked to them. Valkyrie is this, suddenly turned leader who wants to take care of the people post-blip and is there for everyone, but is quite lonely in her regards as no one's quite like her anymore. But then at the same time, we have a shop called the Infinity Cones, based on the guy that ruined it and killed all of that. He is the direct correlation of why they are so depressed in the first place. He literally destroyed half the universe. If that shit was made in today's standards, that would be cancelled without a doubt. It would never have been made. This is an interesting concept when regarding Valkyrie, yet in the film it's replaced with Thor feeling jealous of a hammer. Like, what are we doing here? Where is the source material? Why are we so afraid of making a serious Thor? Gore the God Butcher is a half-baked character. Christian Bale is wasted to be a Sunday morning cartoon character who just steals kids, when in the comic book, Gore is a genuine threat between the 9 realms. We only see one god being killed during the runtime. The original comic book is regarded as one of the most pinnacle stories of modern-day Thor. You can't change the tone of a comic book into a film without realizing the ramifications of why that tone was specifically made in the first place. Why make them into this childish, unfinished mess that just doesn't get the source material? I just don't understand it. This is a little brief note about What If and Marvel Zombies, as I feel like they have an unlimited potential for their stories, but are limited for what Disney wants them to create, with their ongoing issues with character rights and clearance to do certain stories, which makes me feel upset, as the point of What If is down to the creative process, coming up with fresh ideas that are similar to that of the Absolutes or the Ultimates. But in the show, it's a way for these teams to do something completely different with the status quo, but for the MCU it's treated as a joke for most of the time. Stripping back the fun of something and thinking of the first thing that came to mind, like, what if we make Howard have a child? Or if Thor was a party kid? Like, we're like, what if we, like, Hogan save the day? But it's like Die Hard. I will say there's some really good episodes in here, though, to do with both. The Strange character in the first season is incredible. The Wakanda and T'Challa stuff, Nebula becoming a Nova Cop. These ideas feel like they took big swings. They just don't do anything with them. They're really limited by their runtime, and that is such a shame to me, because these two, Marvel Zombies and What If, they're pioneers of what kind of Marvel can do that is not just the MCU. You've got things like X-Men 97 and Your Friendly Neighbor Spider-Man, which is MCU adjacent. So when you have something that's directly correlating it with What If and Zombies, why choose these storylines? What if you just wrote a script and made it go past the first draft? Another bad way to go around it is to add unnecessary plot lines for no apparent reason. That example being the DC animated catalog, where they either add way too much to the story where it gets really overcomplicated for no reason, or they just trim things that are so fundamental to the story that it kind of misses the mark. Starting with A Long Halloween, they make these subtle differences that conclude into a confusing ending. Beginning from the start of the story, as Batman is accompanied by Gordon, GCPD, but also the Dent family with Harvey and Glinda. They are all intertwined with the ongoing issues of the Holiday Killer, who is kind of this middleman between Falcone and the Maronis. To be really obvious, the Holiday Killer obviously only kills on holidays. Some key characters like Alberto gets changed to be more new and complex, with him changes his motivations. For when he gets revealed to be the killer, sorta, rather than him being involved in the business to prove himself, it's just he's wanting to do it for money and for a shameful act of escape from the madness. The subtle change makes his motivations to kill both the side of the war much more confusing. Why would you kill your family for the sake of a mystery? It feels very sped up for its audience sake. In the comic, the mystery is between the pages when compared to the seconds on the screen. Another is Two-Face himself, as Dent's coin is from Batman, which later provides this odd change in the second part where it's actually from Falcone to Bruce. Just leave the coin as it is. Why do you have to complicate it? Why do you have to give another step to the solution? Dent's coin is fundamental to him, not to Batman. Catwoman and Batman are being close in this film as Selina knows he's Bruce. She tells him everything to do with the connection to the Falcone family, similar to that of Batman in 2021. My least favourite change is its reduction of character and their importance to the plot. Carmine Falcone's daughter, Sophia, is reduced to a shocking death that no one would care for. Her voice lines are that to zero. She does nothing in the film, whereas the comic book, she's quite fundamental of why the war needs to happen. All of this room is to make change for Glinda. Now, I like Glinda, but she's just used to be one of the worst plot twists I've ever seen in a film. She uses other characters to be an origin point for her, as she is now the lost love of Alberto, which then in turn was the original motivation for the holiday killings. This led Glenda to come to Gotham and marry Harvey Dent, manipulating him into striking at the Falcone family. That simple addition to the story may feel more complex, but it takes out so much of Harvey's identity in the film, and more importantly, takes away from the source material. You have a person like Glinda be associated with the Falcones, but never interact with them, never talk to them. Either I missed something here, or just like, why did we need to do this? It feels fundamentally wrong towards the source material, as Glinda is more of a villain than Harvey. Harvey is supposed to be Two-Face, but he's simply the Dark Knight's version of the character. She doesn't confess to the audience what she did, she just does it to Batman. For some reason, she has zero reasonings to talk to this random man. Like, I'm just thinking about it, and it's just so weird of a change. You change so much by just making one character more important. I don't know why you would do this. I just still baffles me. But then it changes Alberto's motivations, as he feels like more of a victim instead of a rising star in the crime family. These subtle changes make the film feel more like they saw the cliff notes of the characters and stories in tone and just went, I can do this blindfolded. Let me have a go. Superman All-Star, on the other hand, is nearly a perfect adaptation with some minor flaws, as really it just reminds me of this one time I was watching Rogue One and this came onto my screen.
So we were this close.
Its adaptation of aesthetics is all there, as we get the gravity of his death within himself, but just not with the supporting characters that accompany the film. The focus is on the master amazing plan of Lex trying to kill Superman once and for all. It feels to me like this film is a puzzle piece, and there's just a few pieces of the puzzle that I can't find. You know, they're on the floor somewhere, they're under carpet, the cat has ate them. Like, it's missing a few things is what I'm getting at. This being the chapter of Zabara and Clark having one last conversation as Superman is stranded on Harte. Harte. Why am I struggling so hard to say that? Oh my god. Pages are this beautiful case of how Superman inspires all, even when he himself is just human. His death in the film brings him closer to his friends, foes, and strangers, as we're also missing another key scene saving a suicidal teen named Regan. His care for both the people beyond the stars and for the ones down on Earth is heartbreaking. So when it does not include it in the film, it feels like it's just trying to deliberately show its grander moments and not its tender ones. It expands and fleshes out Superman being that much more than just an indestructible man. These Supermen all have their little quirks, and that one is Mr. Spitlick, or, Kazlik. I can't say that name. Alongside that imp is some more standard Supermen, one being wrapped in bandages, which is kind of odd to me. As they stop the Chronoverse, some of the Supermen have ulterior motives. The one in bandages have a nice conversation with John, taking a step back from the big bad. The others get into the fray as suddenly Cal Kent resists our current day Superman from stopping the threat, as his alternative motive is quickly to be seen to be Cal stops on the ground. I can't hear Pa's heartbeat. Screaming out, Pa, not my Pa. Is one line, I can save everybody, is not apparent here. We turn to the funeral as all of the Supermen support the current day Supes. Ma and Clark talk, this overwhelming weight on Clark's shoulders saying, I didn't get to say goodbye. As it gets shown to us that the one in bandages is our Superman. He thanks those around him for letting him see his Pa one last time. The leader of the Supermen steps out of the pool and hands Clark an indestructible flower from the new Krypton, illustrating that some things will never be forgotten. In this film, we get zero mention of showing these tender moments between all the characters. It's just Lex and Superman, which shows like they are afraid to show the softer side of the characters. It comes off as the impending doom of his death is enough for the film. It just isn't. Mainstream media at the time was preparing for Zack Snyder's version of the character, which is just a whole nother can of worms. It's simply a couple of chapters that don't make the full story that really impacts the fundamental idea of why Superman's death is so detrimental to everything around him. Prime Video is in a unique position as they can pick and choose what kind of library they want to produce, but I hear you saying Marvel and DC also do this. They take the source material and push it into a different medium. They have original storylines. How is this any different? Well, that is the fundamental misunderstanding of keeping the original creators when you create it for a different medium. They made the call to switch from comic to animated show. Bringing the original people who created the concept, or at least staying close, leaves to no room of interpretation. Spearheading the show is a good choice when it's adapting its source material, as they get to create original storylines from the ground up. They take the greatness of its source material and expand side characters, bring storylines that happen way too late in the show's life cycle, and more importantly, you get to care about relationships. When we get the superhero marks, it feels more worthwhile. It's the opposite of Boys with this oversaturation of content. We weave into the relationships like even Mark, Will and Rick, and the absolute standout of Ray and Rex. Without Ray's gender swap, we would have never got that storyline, and it never would have felt more impactful with Rex's death. To slide it back on the bad side, we get a show like The Boys where it feels like it's become what it hates, criticizing the overwhelming fatigue of superhero movies, but then it creates overwhelming superhero fatigues. The superheroes and just media slop that it is feels so boring. We get spin-off after spin-off, collab after collab. It's getting boring as the writers start to make the absolute worst of the worst become more down to earth. Homelander and his sympathizers, which I'm going to call them sympathizers, coining that term now. The show to me is conflicting as majority of the characters are not what they were at the beginning. Some seem more sympathetic, like A-Train, and some seem to go in the direction of like they become likable because they're so unlikable. What I'm getting at here is that if the source material is a piece of shit, do not make it into an adaptation. It's bad for a reason. It shouldn't see daylight for a reason. Yes, the show is good, but it's not anything from the source material. This change is both good and bad, because how the hell did this happen? How did that source material turn into that? The best of the best, the things that I want to stand out as actually good adaptations of its source material, for me, is Batman Year One. It is a perfect example of how you adapt something from a comic book. It understands the source material, the tone is consistent, the voice acting matches the agents and cadence of the story. It is the quintessential superhero adaptation. To conclude all my thoughts and feelings about the superhero media that has been kept dormant in my brain for so damn long, all I want to suggest you do as a fan, a long-time lover, or once in a lifetime you just catch a superhero movie, always credit the original writers and artists, as they deserve your praise when it comes to adapting something, as without it, we would simply be out of to talk about.